Radhe Krishna. Welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is the Mesopotamian Civilization. In today's video, we are going to learn about what a civilization is, river valley civilizations, and our main topic, the Mesopotamian Civilization, main features of it, and then the contributions it has to the modern world, and a bit more about the civilizations. So, let's get started. Right. First of all, during the Neolithic Age, people began to live and work together in groups. This formed the earliest human societies. As societies progressed, life became much more easier than it could ever be. Due to advanced techniques of farming, people were able to produce more than they themselves could actually consume. Besides that, they acquired knowledge of different craftsmanship, and simultaneous discoveries of copper and bronze further added to the pace of human progress. Food production and metal technology introduced some complexities into the lifestyle of our ancestors, and search for raw material and trading of goods between farmers and artisans led to the development of trade. And as trade developed, people had the need to live close together. This need to live close together required early people to move into large, well-organized groups. These large and well-organized groups usually had a clearly defined boundary and local administrative mechanisms. These were larger than villages, and they shared cultural traditions such as language, arts, and architecture. And this is regarded to as the start of urbanization. This led to the rise of many towns and cities, and the beginning of town and city dwelling is regarded to as the start of urbanization. All these developments led to the development of the first human civilization. The world has seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. The word civilization is derived from the Latin word civis, which means citizen or dweller of a city. The civilization essentially means a complex system of social advancement characterized by a reasonably organized life, a system of governance and law, and progress in science and arts. So the world has seen the rise and fall of many civilizations, and most of these emerged in the Bronze Age on the bank of the rivers. The Bronze Age is a period of the time in the evolution of material and culture, and during this Bronze Age, 4 great civilizations emerged here in the Bronze Age. First, the Mesopotamian Civilization between the rivers Euphrates and Tigris, and the Indus Valley Civilization, number 2, Indus Valley Civilization, that is along the banks of the river Indus in the Indian subcontinent, and the Chinese Civilization between the rivers Huanghe and Yangtze. Please excuse me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. So moving on, we've also got the Egyptian Civilization in the Nile Valley. So in today's video, we are going to learn about the Mesopotamian Civilization. All these civilizations emerged in the banks of the rivers for many reasons. These reasons can be, let's say for example, abundant water. Rivers ensured abundant water which could be easily used by the entire settlement, and also rivers ensured that they could travel long distances very quickly. And just quickly, so rivers also, when the twin rivers flooded, they made sure that they deposited alluvial silt, and this made the soil fertile, and so people started investing in farming rather than hunting, which gave them a lot of time to invest in other occupations as well. These were the reasons they all settled down near the banks of the rivers, and they're also known as river valley civilizations, and one such civilization is the Mesopotamian Civilization. As now we are finally moving into the Mesopotamian Civilization. So this Mesopotamian Civilization is a Bronze Age civilization between the rivers Euphrates and Tigris in West Asia. So the Mesopotamian Civilization is a mixture of many civilizations. Since it is a civilization that is a mixture of many civilizations, it is also referred to as the cradle of civilizations. This Mesopotamian civilization, first to conquer it were the Sumerians, then followed by the Assyrians, then the Akkadians, and eventually the Babylonians. Thus, the Great Mesopotamia is a mixture of the Sumerians, Babylonians, and the Assyrians. These are the key civilizations that the Mesopotamian civilization is a mixture of. This Mesopotamian civilization, well, it did not have many natural boundaries protecting it like mountains. Thus, it attracted many nomadic tribes. So, many civilizations settled there after time to time. So, moving on, let's look at the main features of the Mesopotamian civilization. The UR city of the Mesopotamian civilization, it is the Sumerian city of the Mesopotamian civilization, was excavated by Sir Leonard Woolley in 1922. This provided insights for us into the way of life in Mesopotamia. The main features of the Mesopotamian civilization are town planning, architecture, and social structure, family life, occupations. There are many occupations in there, and we've got trade and commerce, and religion and culture. And then we'll move on to something else. First of all, let us look at these main features in a little bit more detail. Coming to town planning, here in the UR city of the Sumerian city of Mesopotamia, it was divided into three main parts. The city was divided into three main parts: the scared area, the walled city, and the outer town. The sacred area consisted of a massive structure, a massive step pyramid structure called the ziggurat. The ziggurat was the chief temple for the principal god of the city. There were also other smaller temples scattered around the city in the sacred area, and the outer town and the walled city were the main residential areas. Narrow streets were lined with houses. However, the houses would face away from the streets, and they also built structures. Well, eventually they built structures like huts made of reeds and covered with a thick coating of mud, and then eventually they moved on to bricks. They built houses with sun-dried bricks eventually, but they built temples and other social structure with baked bricks. I don't know why this difference, but possibly because they're a bit more important, possibly. I don't know. So moving on to architecture, the Mesopotamians made the first cities in the world, probably. So the UR city of the Mesopotamians, it was developed for its time due to the natural supply of muddy clay that they got, and due to the rushes and reeds that grew in the place. The Mesopotamians, as I told you earlier, eventually built huts made out of reeds covered with a thick coating of mud, and later moved on to bricks. So the Mesopotamians did not have much wood in that area, so they built one of the world's first arches, columns, and domes to hold up the weight of roofs. Temples in the city were also used as schools, observatories, storehouses, and also trade centers. So moving on, here's a little fun fact. The Hanging Gardens is one of the 7 wonders of the world. It is credited to the Mesopotamians. But however, some scholars argue that the Hanging Gardens might not even have actually existed. And no one seems to agree on how this Hanging Gardens were actually created, or why it was created, or even how it was created. But the most popular theory is that a king built it for his wife to cheer his wife up, who missed the mountains and valleys of her homeland. So moving on, social structure. The Mesopotamian civilization social structure was divided into 3 categories, and it was a hierarchical society. So it was divided into 3 main groups or classes, or whatever you want to call it. So these were the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class. The upper class comprised of nobility, the kings and the royal family, the priests, and higher upper officials. And the king was also considered the representative of God on the earth. Coming to the middle class, this comprised of citizens, mainly farmers, artisans and traders, mainly farmers, who led a comfortable enough life due to flourishing agriculture. And the low class comprised of slaves from war. Slaves were treated well in Mesopotamia as they were allowed to marry and also have a family. Speaking of family, let's move on to family life. So in the Mesopotamian civilization, they followed the norms of the patriarchal society. This right now had the father domination. The father was the head of the family, and women's rights were also safeguarded, and women could go anywhere or do anything if they had their husband's permission. And boys were sent to school to study and how to read and write and learn education, and while girls were taught how to they were taught music and dance. Man, I'm really glad that changed today. So moving on, occupations. There were quite a couple of occupations in Mesopotamia, like agriculture, animal husbandry, art and craft, and many others too. But agriculture remained the core occupation because of the fertile land in that area. Many people invested in agriculture rather than in any other ones. So agriculture was the sort of core occupation. So the main crops that they grew there were many crops. Wheat and barley was the most important of them all, but they also grew crops like fruits and vegetables and pulses as well. The Mesopotamians were among one of the first cultivators of wheat. Irrigation was also necessary, and they also did irrigation because of irregular rainfall, and they also built dikes to control the flooding of rivers. And farming also brought people together. For example, during the harvest season, people would gather to collect grains and store them efficiently. Like this, farming also brought people together. Moving on to another occupation, domestication of animals. So animal husbandry simply means that domesticating animals and bringing them up under human control. Domestication simply means that bringing up animals or plants under human control. So many people used to do this in Mesopotamia as well. They used to domesticate sheep, cattle, goats, many others. So moving on, they also did art and craft. The Mesopotamians were highly creative and industrious. So they used lapis lazuli and gold for jewelry, and they used wood and reeds for furniture, and the designs they did on these were very beautiful and very nice looking. You can say that's one way of putting it. And the Mesopotamians were also probably one of the first to use the potter's wheel. A potter's wheel dates back to 3500 BC, about 3500 BC, and and the Mesopotamians were also very well acquainted with metallurgy. Moving on, trade and commerce. As because of surplus agriculture, trade and commerce began to develop in Mesopotamia between the cities of Mesopotamia. Historians, archaeologists have found seals of Mesopotamia in the Indus Valley sites, and they've similarly found the seals of Indus Valley in the Indus Valley Civilization, in the Mesopotamian Civilization as well. This shows that there was extensive trade between both the civilizations. The Mesopotamians also they traded finished goods to the Mediterranean countries and also Egypt. They kept all their records and trade dealings on clay tablets. So moving on, religion and culture. Here, religion and culture, every city in the civilization had a patron god. This patron god, there were other gods as well, and there were temples for other gods as well, but the patron god had the biggest temple in the city, and they also worshipped forces of nature such as the sun, moon, stars, wind and rain, and etc. etc. So the gods were kept happy by various rituals that were conducted by priests, and kings were considered as chief priests here. So now let's move on to what contributions the Mesopotamian civilization actually has to the modern world. The Mesopotamian civilization is considered as one of the oldest civilizations known to humankind, and we still remain indebted of its various contributions to the modern world. These are primarily in the fields of writing and literature, science and mathematics, technology and law. So when it comes to writing and literature, this is one of the contributions Mesopotamian civilization has to the modern world, and this is because they invented a script of writing called the cuneiform, which is derived from the Latin word cuni, which means wedge. So it is obviously safe to assume that the cuneiform is some sort of wedge shape writing, and they used to write it on wet clay tablets using a stylus. This stylus was made out of reeds or wood or even metal sometimes, and after they wrote all that, these clay tablets were baked in fire so that they could harden, and each clay tablet would be considered one individual page of a book. Jeez, imagine how big one book must be for them. So one of the famous books in the civilization is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is believed to have taught values to children, and this was originally written on 12 clay tablets. Moving on to the field of science and mathematics. So the Mesopotamian civilization, as you might have already guessed, invented also a number system that's called the sexagesimal, and it regards to the number 60 as supreme. So yeah, this is why the division is based on the unit of 60. They divided a day into two halves of 12 hours each, and each hour had 60 minutes, each minute had 60 seconds, and they divided a year into 12 months, and they also divided a week into 7 days. The Mesopotamians were also very well acquainted with astronomy. They believed everything happened for a reason, so they related everything to various omens, every cause and reasons to various omens, and the astrology that it has contributes to the modern world a little bit. Oh, and here's another little fun fact. After the invention of the cuneiform, the Egyptians developed their own script called the hieroglyph. The hieroglyph is also a pictographic form type script that was the Egyptian script, and each picture here was represented as denoted a letter of the alphabet. For example, the symbol of the palm stood for letter B and a lion stood for letter L. So let's move on to technology. In our case, let's look at the invention of the wheel. No one is exactly sure who invented the wheel or when it was invented, but the oldest wheel dates back to Mesopotamia, as you might have already guessed. So this wheel, first of all, Mesopotamians probably used wheels for pottery, but then later used it for transporting goods around and transporting themselves around on wheels, and you get the idea. So the Mesopotamians had the oldest known wheel. Moving on to law. Right, the Mesopotamians were the first to develop the code of law as well. Geez, they are one developed civilization. So this code of law was expected to be followed by all citizens, every citizen, or else they would be liable to face the consequences. King Hammurabi of Babylon had laws written like these on stone slabs, and the eye for an eye philosophy was literally followed by Hammurabi himself actually. This eye for an eye philosophy means if you broke another man's bones, your bones would be broken too. And and King Hammurabi devised many laws like these covering all aspects of life. Like, let's say 282 laws covering all aspects of life. Now, the Mesopotamian civilization was a great civilization, and Yeah, we've learned about everything, but the Mesopotamian civilization also had to face its end. So let's learn about how this great civilization came to a decline. So the decline of the Mesopotamian civilizations, historians relate these to various causes. One of them is frequent flooding and faulty irrigation techniques. These led to the rise of mineral salts in the soil, making it infertile for farming, eventually forcing the people to abandon the site and move elsewhere. And other reasons, they also think that the river Euphrates changed its course, adversely affecting many Mesopotamians. And also they think that wars are an important cause for the decline as well. The last Sumerian dynasty fell in 2000 BCE, followed by a period of big chaos and confusion. That is probably how the civilization came to decline. These are all the reasons. So in today's video we have covered we have covered main features of Mesopotamian civilization, contributions to the Mesopotamian civilization, its decline, in a little introduction. So that's it for today. Until next time, I'm Radhya. I'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned for more videos by subscribing my channel. See you.